faithful to me over the years. I can attest to that. Last time I spoke on exercising godliness, the passage I spoke from was 1 Timothy 4, and verse 9, Paul uses the phrase, "This is a faithful saying." And he uses that phrase 5 times, 4 times to Timothy and 1 time to Titus. And also, as I shared my testimony the first time that I spoke, also looking in 1 Timothy, but chapter 1, verse 15, it says, "This is a faithful saying and worthy of all acceptance, that Christ Jesus came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am the foremost or chief." And so, as I was preparing for those messages, that idea of the faithfulness of God just struck me, and I was reminded how wonderful it is to know that God is faithful. And so I want to encourage you with that God is faithful. Normally, we think that it's our job to be faithful. As people that are trying to be good Christians, we want to do what's right. We want to get better. We want to do well. Exercising, like I talked about. We want to exercise what God has given us. And we feel like that's our job. But when we're not doing that well in our minds, sometimes we feel like we are just defeated and we're not being faithful. We're not being holy like He is holy. Sometimes that feels like an overwhelming call that we can't stand up to that. We can't hold up to that. And so in those times, one of the faithful sayings that Paul mentioned, the context following says, "If we are faithless, He remains faithful." So again, I just want to encourage you that God is faithful. And whether we are being faithful or not, that doesn't change His faithfulness. He remains faithful. And I was talking to James earlier, to some of us that are going through really hard times, it might add to our confusion. It might add to our questions. If this is true, if God is faithful, where is He? Why isn't He showing up in my life? Why isn't He showing up in my circumstance? Where is His faithfulness to me? So it might not be super encouraging to you. For the rest of us, maybe aren't going through such hard times, hopefully we can be greatly encouraged. But for those of you that are going through those hard times where this might not be super encouraging because you're already questioning, where is the faithfulness of God in my life? One day, and I will show this to you as we look at Lamentations a little bit, you can still have hope now. Even though you're going through a hard time, you can still have hope. And one day you will look back and you will say, God truly was faithful, even in that time, even in that hard time. So I hope that we are all encouraged. The other thing that I noticed as I was preparing, and I think I mentioned it last time I spoke, how often the theme kept coming up of remember, and remind each other, and keep this in remembrance. And it struck me that that's really important in our life. We need to remember. I know for me, I'm a forgetful person. You know, I might hear a good message up here, and the next day I'll forget it. And I'll be trying to rack my brain. What was he saying? What did I really appreciate? I know there was something that I really liked. We're forgetful people. We need to remember. And we can see that is so important, especially when we're thinking about God's faithfulness, because some of the things that we remember point directly to what He has done for us. And so I want to point that out. We read Lamentation 3:19 through 24, but I want to go back and skim over the first 18 verses, and it's a bunch of verses of the same thing. It's agony and suffering, so I just want to skim over them just to give some context for that passage, verses 19 through 24. Give me a second while I turn to that. So the first verse in Lamentation 3, if you want to turn there and just kind of follow along a little bit, says, I am the man who has seen affliction under the rod of his wrath. And just starts off right away. And this is after 2 other chapters of just describing the agony that this man is under. And we're assuming this is Jeremiah. It doesn't say who wrote the book, but we're assuming it's Jeremiah. He was under extreme stress and agony. He was given the task of telling the people what they did not want to hear. And the people made it very clear to him that they didn't want to hear what he had to say. And they treated him very poorly. And throw on top of that what the Lord was planning on doing to the children of Israel at that time. What the Lord was trying to tell the children of Israel is, you are under sin. You are not acting like my people, and I have to punish you for that. And so that was hard for Jeremiah to hear himself, because that was his people. He loved them. And so he was under great stress. Verse 4, he has made my flesh and my skin waste away. He has broken my bones. Verse 7, again, just skimming through. He has walled me about so that I cannot escape. He has made my chains heavy. And then you get down to verse 18, and he says, so I say my endurance has perished, so has my hope from the Lord. Here's a man that was under such great stress and agony that he would be able to say, my hope in the Lord is gone, it's vanishing. I don't have it anymore. But then you get to verse 21, and what does he say? But this I call to mind, the idea of remembering, and therefore I have hope. He immediately is able to, as he recalls, as he remembers what the Lord has done and who the Lord is, that hope immediately springs up again. And so when we find ourselves in position of great trial, great suffering, and it feels like there is no way we could have hope, remember the Lord. Call to mind the things that the Lord, and you'll notice that in verses 21 and 20, or 19 and 20, he calls out to the Lord and says, Lord, look at me, look at where I'm at. Are you going to remember me? And I think it's the Lord that brought to mind the things that he has done. I think the Lord helped him recall and remember. And again, it immediately brought back that sense of hope. And that wasn't the end of the agony. There's another 2 chapters of agony and suffering. And so just because you have hope doesn't mean you're not suffering. But you can have hope through suffering. Why? Because the Lord is faithful. And you know that. And as you look back and recall what he has done for you up to that point, and I would say what he's doing for you currently, even in the hard situation, you can have hope. Suffering might not go away, but you can have hope. So it was that recalling that gave him the hope, that reminder of who the Lord is. And so then just looking at that, verses 22 and 23, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. This is what he is recalling. This is what he is remembering. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You want to have hope in this dark world? In your time of suffering, in your time of trial, you want to have hope? Remember who the Lord is. Remember that his love never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They're new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. And this is right in the middle. Like I said, there's another 2 chapters following this of great agony and suffering that the author expresses. It's right in the middle of that. And we have many songs written about these couple verses. There's a lot of songs and a lot of, you see wall art that has this passage on there. And I think we were talking this morning, and John mentioned, boy, whenever I see Lamentation, all I can think about is a guy, in the fetal position on the ground, just weeping. But right in the middle of this this time of agony. We have verses that have spoken to us through the centuries of great is God's faithfulness. All because he called out to the Lord and remembered. So it's very important that we do the same when we're going through trials. Call out to the Lord. It's easy for me, and I would assume for you too, when you're going through a hard time. I'm the one I'm thinking about because I'm suffering. I'm upset. I'm anxious, whatever it might be. I'm the one I'm thinking about. I need to stop thinking about myself and call out to the Lord. And you notice when the author, again, we assume it's Jeremiah, when he called out to the Lord, he brought his own pain and suffering to him and said, Lord, look at what I'm going through. That's okay. We can do that. We can bring what we are agonizing over, we can bring that to the Lord. But it's amazing the faithfulness of the Lord in that. He will point us to himself. Take our eyes off of our own suffering. Point our eyes to him. I need to stop thinking about myself when I'm going through a hard time. Call out to the Lord, and he will remind me, this is who I am. Even in your time of suffering, I'm still faithful. Tara, my wife, read a book a while ago, and I really loved the concept of the book. I did not read it because it was extremely girly and emotional and overly expressive, just using a whole paragraph to say what you could in just 2 words, that kind of stuff. And it was just over the top for me, so I didn't read it. But I got the theme, I got the concept. The book was called 1,000 Gifts. And the basic thought was to thank God for 1,000 things that you can think of or things that you notice throughout the day. Just write them down and thank God for them. How many days do we go in our life without thanking God for big things, little things, anything? How many days do we go without thanking God? How often do we worry about what we do or don't have and wonder, how are we going to manage? How are we going to get through this? And so taking that idea of just pausing for just a moment, just think of one thing throughout the day. We talk about you can look back and see the faithfulness of the Lord, and you will be able to do that. But it doesn't have to take years and years to be able to look back. You can look back on one day and think of, wow, the Lord was good to me here. The Lord was faithful to me here. And we'll see that a little bit later on. In Psalm 92, 1 through 4, if you want to turn there, you can. I have it written down because my wife encouraged me to just have the passage written down. So I'll just read it. A psalm, a song for the Sabbath. It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to declare your steadfast love in the morning and your faithfulness by night. And the King James Version says every night. To the music of the lute and the harp, to the melody of the lyre. We were just singing up here songs of praise and worship. That's a good thing to do. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the works of your hands I sing for joy. Are we going through a hard time? Are we struggling? Do you want joy? What has the Lord done for you? Think back on his works. And I love this, the way the psalmist put that. Your steadfast love in the morning. Well, that's pretty nice. When I wake up, I know that his mercies are new every morning. That's really helpful because there are a lot of mornings. I'm not a morning person, so there are a lot of mornings that I would rather not get up. I would rather just hang out in bed, sleep a little longer. But it's nice to know that when I do get up, his mercy is right there. It's new. It's fresh. The other thing that is nice about that is I've used up yesterday's mercy because I'm a moron. And so it's good to know that the mercy is new in the morning. Then what about in the evening? What about at night? Well, that's where the idea of faithfulness comes in. And again, we don't have to look back years and years, just over today. How was God faithful? Do I take a moment to say, thanks, Lord, for what you have done for me and how you have gotten me through just today? We can do that every night because he is faithful every day. Do I give thanks for or declare God's mercy and his faithfulness? Do I do that on a daily basis? Well, it would probably help me get through my struggles if I was to stop and thank him, because I would have to then remember, what did he do for me? In Deuteronomy 32:4, thinking about the psalmist said that it causes us to sing for joy when we think about the work. Deuteronomy 32:4 is the start of a second song of Moses. And it starts this way: the rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are justice. A God of faithfulness and without iniquity, just and upright is he. Our boys are in a lot of sports, but just thinking about baseball as one example, most of the time, the umpires, especially in those younger leagues, make a lot of questionable calls. And it's just kind of annoying, kind of frustrating, but we will credit them if they are consistent with their bad calls. You know, at least everybody knows that they're not going to call this a strike, or they are going to call this a strike, as long as they're consistent. And the same in football. The refs, they're always making bad calls. But as long as it's fair, as long as it goes both ways, you know, if they're consistent. But a God of faithfulness without iniquity, just and upright. God is both consistent and perfect and just and upright. There are no bad calls with God. And that's something that we can stand on. We don't have to question. We don't have to wonder, well, is this really right, Lord? You know, that seems a little off to me. No, there are no bad calls. God is perfect in every way. Another song in Psalm 89, verses 1 and 2, a maskil of, and I believe that's a musical term, a maskil of Ethan the Ezrahite. I will sing of the steadfast love of the Lord forever. With my mouth I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I said, steadfast love will be built up forever. In the heavens you will establish your faithfulness. And then down in verse 8, O Lord, God of hosts, who is mighty as you are, O Lord, with your faithfulness all around you. And I just get this picture of God, and if we were to see his presence, what would it look like to have faithfulness just surround him? And there are different places where prophets and people have been taken up, and they see the throne, and they try to describe the beauty of it and the glory of it. And we don't have words that can really express that kind of beauty. And I wonder if part of that beauty that they are seeing and trying to express is the faithfulness that just surrounds him. It's a part of his being. It's a part of who he is. Your faithfulness all around you. Do you know of another God that is like the God of the heavens, who loves like he does and is faithful like he is? I can't think of another one. Why do we ever doubt him? Why do we ever? The wonderful thing is he knows our frame. He knows we are but dust. But I still ask the question when I think about his faithfulness, why do we ever have concerns? Why are we ever anxious? But we're human, and he's given us grace for that. But it is a wonderful thing to remember. Again, remember God is faithful in every way. He's unlike any other God that the world has ever tried to offer. He is faithful. And Deuteronomy 7:9 says, "Know therefore that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations." And I was thinking about a generation that's considered, depends on the culture, depends on a lot of different things, but 20 to 40 years. So we'll just pick 30 years as an average of what a generation is. 1,000 generations, that's 30,000 years, if you're going to take this literally. It's not a literal statement, but if you were, 30,000 years. And the passage before that we read in Psalm said, "to all generations." So now there's no time limit. He is faithful to all generations. I think my short vapor of a life fits easily in that time frame. I don't have to wonder if God is going to be faithful while I'm here. My little life fits perfectly inside that 30,000 years, if that's all it was. I've only got maybe 80, if I'm lucky. I fit right inside that time frame where God is faithful. And so I can stand on that. I can hold on to that. Hebrews 10:23 says, "Let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering." Why? For he who promised is faithful. We can hold on to that. And again, the time frame that he's said to be faithful, either 1,000 generations or all generations, that covers our entire lifespan and then some. We can hold fast to the fact that he is faithful. Like the author of Lamentation, no matter how bad it gets, we can have hope. We can hold fast to that hope. Why? Again, because we remember he is faithful. And this is not a kind of hope that the world likes to offer where you think, oh, I really hope so. I'm not really sure though, but I kind of hope so. No, this is a different kind of hope. It's a steadfast, sure, constant hope. That's what we can have because of how faithful our Lord is. Even when things are tough and we don't understand why this is happening, it feels like we don't have the faith or hope, he remains faithful and will remain faithful. The work that he started, he will complete. And I don't even have close to enough time to go over all the promises that he has given to us. Those are promises coming from a God who cannot lie. You want to talk about faithfulness? This God, our Father, is faithful. How do we see that then? By calling out to him and recalling and remembering what he has done for us. This morning we have the bread and the cup in front of us. We're going to do communion. It's first of the month. The Lord said, "Do this in remembrance of me." When we come to this, it's more than just taking a little wafer or a little crumb of bread or a little drink of juice. It's way more than that. We are told to remember. Why? Because we're forgetful. We forget so often. And I hope that you do it more than once a month. Remember the Lord. Remember what he's done. And so we'll close with that and have Garth come up and lead us in the remembrance meeting, if you will.